headed back up the mountain for another set of new movies. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about my 10 most anticipated movies of this year's Sundance Film Festival. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. As many of you already know, I received press accreditation for the Sundance Film Festival again this year, so I'm headed back to Park City, Utah to experience the festival in person for the third time. In fact, when this video publishes, I'll be mere hours away from heading to Sundance. There are quite a few films I'm excited for this year, so I wanted to share 10 of my most anticipated Sundance movies with you. So I'm hoping to see as many of these as I can while I'm in Park City, as well as some other bonus movies, which I'll mention at the end of this video. With the way the schedule works out, there may be some I don't get a chance to see in the theater, but my press pass is a hybrid pass, so I hope to catch most of the remaining ones online. Just like I've done with past festivals, I'll be bringing you reviews of the movies I do get to see over the coming weeks and months. I'm not going to try to rank these by anticipation, so we're just going to go through this list alphabetically. First up is Bubble and Squeak, directed by Evan Toohey and starring Himesh Patel, Sarah Goldberg, Steven Yeun, and Dave Franco. This one tells the story of newlyweds, Declan and Dolores, who, while traveling through Europe, are accused of a crime. What did they supposedly do? Smuggle cabbages into a country where cabbages are banned. A premise as silly as that was sure to catch my eye, but this seems like it's going to be an interesting blend of goofiness, satire, and underlying heartfelt drama, as we see this couple put through a very unique test of their relationship. This definitely has that character-driven indie Sundance vibe to it, so I think it's going to go over well with this crowd. Next is Dead Lover, directed by, co-written by, and starring Grace Glowicki. This is the first of several films from the Midnight program that made this anticipated list, which probably comes as no surprise to anybody who's familiar with my festival habits. This film tells the story of a gravedigger who meets the man of her dreams only for him to die shortly thereafter. Using the resources at her disposal and her particular set of skills, she then attempts to resurrect him to continue their relationship. Now, this is obviously somewhat reminiscent of a number of other films, but this does seem to have a unique and slightly absurdist twist to it. Supposedly, it draws upon everything from disco to German expressionism, and is described as a cinematic fever dream. That type of frenetic visual chaos doesn't always work for me, but sometimes it does. So we'll see if this is one of those times. Continuing on is Didn't Die, directed by Mira Menon. Another entry in this year's Midnight program. This is a zombie film for the digital age. It tells the story of Vanita, a post-apocalyptic podcast host played by Kieran Deol, who tries to continue her show despite a quickly dwindling audience, thanks to, zombies. It's described as an homage to George A. Romero, both visually and thematically, and even utilizes black and white cinematography. It seems like it's going to be on the low budget side of things, but I'm really curious to see where it goes with the story and how it addresses and incorporates modern social themes in the way that Romero's zombie films did with 60s and 70s social commentary. I'm a zombie film fan in general, so there was no way that this wasn't going to make my top 10 most anticipated. Next is The Legend of Ochi, directed by Isaiah Saxon in his feature directorial debut. This is a fantasy adventure starring Helena Zengel, Finn Wolfhard, Emily Watson, and Willem Dafoe, and has already been picked up by A24, with a scheduled release on February 28th of this year. It tells the story of a remote village in which people have been taught to be fearful of creatures known as the Ochi, which are believed to only come out after dark. After a wounded baby Ochi is left behind, a young girl embarks on a dangerous mission, determined to reunite the baby with its family. Making use of puppetry, animatronics, and matte paintings, this seems like it could be a bit of a throwback to family-oriented adventure fantasies of the 80s and 90s, so I'm looking forward to that likely hit of nostalgia. Moving on, we've got Middletown, co-directed by Jesse Moss and Amanda McBain, the directors behind the Sundance premiered Boys State in 2020 and Girls State in 2024. This is a documentary about a documentary, sort of. In the early and mid-1990s, a group of high school students made a documentary as part of an ongoing class project, and ended up discovering and exposing an illegal toxic waste dumping site with connections to a criminal organization. This documentary tells the story of that project and that discovery, while highlighting the importance of teachers and the power of investigative journalism. Now, I can't imagine many other people will have this as one of their most anticipated of the festival, but I'm actually originally from New York, only about an hour and a half north of Middletown, and this was big news at the time. I was fairly young when all this happened, but even as a kid, I remember hearing about it, so I've got a bit more of a personal connection to it than most other people at Sundance probably will. Up next is Opus, directed by Mark Anthony Green in his feature directorial debut. Another film in the Midnight program, this horror movie stars Ayo Edebiri, John Malkovich, Rosario Dawson, Juliette Lewis, and many more, and is another film that's already been picked up by A24, with a scheduled theatrical release of March 14th of this year. 30 years after the mysterious disappearance of a massive pop star, a young writer is invited to a remote compound where she finds herself surrounded by sycophants and other journalists. This is the type of movie that could go in so many different directions with its story, so I'm really looking forward to seeing which of those directions it actually takes. It looks like it's gonna offer up an interesting bit of social commentary regarding celebrities and the cult-like fanaticism of fandoms. Plus, we've got John Malkovich as the mysterious pop star in control of the situation, so you just know that this is going to be wild and unpredictable. Next is Rabbit Trap, directed by Bryn Cheney in his feature directorial debut. Yet another entry in this year's Midnight program, this psychological folk horror film stars Dev Patel and Rosie McEwen. Set in 1976, it tells the story of a musician and her husband who move into a remote house in Wales, only to discover that their music disturbs a local supernatural entity, which then tries to insert itself into their lives using a very unsettling form. I really like period pieces, and I really like movies about music, and the combination of those two things is even better, so I have a feeling that I'm gonna enjoy this one, even if it takes the more slow-burn folk horror approach that I anticipate it probably will. Continuing on, we've got The Thing with Feathers, directed by Dylan Southern, whose previous films have all been music documentaries. Based on Max Porter's novella, this dark drama tells the story of a family dealing with grief after an unexpected loss. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch as a father who begins to lose hold of reality, believing that a shadowy presence is stalking him and his two young sons. While this movie probably has some horror elements to it, I think that this is probably more of a psychological drama, and that the horror elements are likely metaphorical, representing physical or maybe mental manifestations of grief in this case. I definitely get some Babadook vibes from this description, so I'm really curious to see where this one actually goes with its story. Next is Together, directed by Michael Shanks in his feature directorial debut. This is another film in the Midnight program. I know, I might as well just put everyone on this list. Starring Alison Brie and Dave Franco, it tells the story of a couple who move from the city to the country, despite their already tenuous and dysfunctional relationship. Following the move, they find themselves more and more isolated from others, and develop a codependent relationship that's expressed in only the way a horror film could. This film is described as combining supernatural with body horror, so I can already imagine the direction that things are probably going to be going here, but I'm really curious to see how it plays out and how it approaches its underlying themes. Rounding things out is Zodiac Killer Project, directed by Charlie Shackleton, perhaps best known for his 10-hour-long documentary about paint drying, whose Letterboxd page has become a hub for personal mental health updates in the form of reviews by thousands of members. Despite sounding like this new film could be part of the Midnight program, this one's actually not. Instead, it's a documentary about an unmade documentary about the Zodiac Killer. Apparently, documentaries about documentaries are big this year at Sundance. Purely from a subject matter standpoint, I'm already interested in this one. But beyond the Zodiac Killer element, this film seems like it's going to be an interesting exploration and dissection of true crime, and what draws people to it. This film is described as being very self-aware and employs all manner of documentary filmmaking techniques, reenactments, archival video, voiceover, etc., in order to walk us through what the unmade documentary would have been like, all while examining the genre itself. So those are my top 10, but like I said at the beginning of the video, I have more than a few bonus movies that I plan to see, which I want to very briefly mention. I'm not going to go into any details on these extra ones right now, but in alphabetical order, I plan to also see 2,000 Meters to Andreevka, April, Atropia, The Ballad of Wallace Island, Brides, Bunny Lover, By Design, Cutting Through Rocks, East of Wall, How to Build a Library, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Jimpa, Kiss of the Spider Woman, The Librarians, Love Brooklyn, Lurker, Lose, Magic Farm, Marley Matlin, Not Alone Anymore, Move Your Body, The Birth of House, Obex, Omaha, Plainclothes, Reigns Over Babel, Rebuilding, Ricky, Sabar Bonda, Sally, Sly Lives, aka The Burden of Black Genius, Sorry Baby, Sugar Babies, The Things You Kill, Touch Me, Twinless, Two Women, The Ugly Stepsister, The Virgin of the Quarry Lake, The Wedding Banquet, and Where the Wind Comes From. Alright, so there you have it, 10 of my most anticipated movies of Sundance 2025, with just a few extra thrown in for good measure. Which Sundance films are you looking forward to this year? Which ones would you like to see me review? Be sure to post your picks and thoughts in the comments below. Remember, I'll be doing a festival recap video and also reviewing as many of these movies as I can, so be on the lookout for those videos for some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this Sundance list, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.